Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Sales Enablement Season 3, featuring the one and only Dale Dupree in Totality.
What's up, Eric? I'm excited to be here. What's up, audience of enablement people? I love you folks, and I'm excited to be here and speak a little bit more about rebellion.
I love it, and we love you, Dale. And so Dale has done so many things. He literally is the copier warrior, a hero of sales mythology that is for real. And I'll just start with the end in mind, which is, and you can still get a ticket as of today, at least, to see him in totality at Totality in Knoxville, Tennessee, if you're watching this on video, on September 26th and 27th and 28th. And maybe if you're super lucky, even getting the lottery for a VIP that I hear is out there somewhere specifically.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
yeah, so he is now the fearless leader of the rebellion. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the sales rebellion.
Well, the Sales Rebellion is an interesting story. It actually has origins that date all the way back to 1984, and let me tell you a little bit about that. So my dad, he was a copier salesperson, but before he became a copier salesperson, he was actually a really dope athlete. Basically one of those guys that had every scout at every major university coming to see him while he was in high school. And through a series of unfortunate events and choices, he lost every single one of those scholarships. And it's nothing crazy, all you out there that are like, whoa, what kind of thing happened? And it wasn't drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But he had one scholarship left, though, at the end of it. And it was a little organization slash Bible college called Carson Newman. My dad went there and played football. And crazy enough, dude, when I went and looked at like the graduating classes that my father was with, like 3 or 4 people went to the NFL. It's a crazy thought, right? That my dad still like had a chance, but he actually suffered from a neck injury that in like today's day and age, if people were to like scan or do an MRI on my dad's neck and see the injury, they'd go, "How are you walking right now?" Right? It was
Yeah.
like a total miracle that my dad didn't suffer from like becoming completely impaired because of this injury. Lived a fairly normal life. He never walked with a hunch or anything weird like that. It was like it never happened, right? So in conjunction with those things, my dad decided, you know what, I'm just going to go into the workforce and I'm going to go back home to Orlando, Florida, where he was born and raised. Got a job at a paper company slash copier organization. My dad was the original Dwight Schrute, basically, and he became like the legend of the Orlando, the Central Florida area in regards to just like not how good he was at selling office equipment, but him as a human, him as a person,
Mm.
him as a leader, him as a friend, him as your neighbor. My dad was just such an incredibly warm and thoughtful person, right? So in 1984, my dad was looking at the business side of things, his success, and he needed and desired and wanted more, not just for himself, but for the people that he sought to serve or currently did, which is the issue stems from, and his decision stems from basically looking at the standard of the copier world and saying it sucks. We can do better than this. And kind of bucking the system, driving right past the mile marker of his non-compete, going like a mile to 2 miles, like inward of his non-compete, outward of his non-compete, opening an office and starting a company. And in 1984.
Wow.
I was born a year later in 1985, and people like to say that toner's running through my veins from the day that I came out. And I spent the next 17 years of my life being homeschooled by my mother,
Mm.
and getting a classical education and being taught to pursue my dreams and to think bigger than just college or a job even. And so I actually toured in a band from the time that I was 17. I was till I was about 22, 23 years old. But I did, and at the time that I was around 21 years old, going on 22, I decided to settle in to my family and I was already marrying my wife, but I decided to slow things down a little bit. Came home, bought a house, also known as a duplex. Maybe some people have heard of something like that. That was 2008. I don't got to tell y'all what happened to real estate in 2008, right? And I started a career in my father's footsteps in copiers also in 2008. I suffered through a bad economy, not knowing jack about sales really, and trying to fit into this mold of a copier salesperson for several years. Finally broke out of that, became more authentic, more genuine, more creative, and the light bulb turned on, and the rocket boosting fuel, uh, filled up the tank, if you will. And for the next several years, I began to, as the kids like to say, get lit.
As a
Go
rock
ahead, please.
star and a sales star. I mean, you had it all
You,
going on.
yeah, you could definitely say it. I like it, honestly, like it was the parallels are interesting, right? Like here I am, like out touring, walking up to random strange kids that don't know who I am when I first got my start in music in cities that I can't even pronounce the name, Okahumpka, like weird places,
Right.
and walking up to people and just
I've
saying
been
like,
there
"Hey,
actually.
it's a great spot. They've got a fish fillet down at the." I'm just kidding, but imagine walking up to strange people and basically just like having to get to know them, and and not being like a creep or weird or disingenuous or manipulative, but instead just like having a Walkman, a CD player, a portable CD player at the time, and saying, "Hey, well, we recorded an album. It's 5 songs. I'd love for you to take a listen. We're playing second tonight. If you want to stick around and chill and watch us." And people would listen on the little headphones. They'd go, "Man, this is good. Can I get a yeah, man?" Pull out a burned CD and
Nice.
do a transaction right there with a random person that I just met for the first time 5 minutes ago. And so
Love
I
it.
kind of learned the basics of sales. I just didn't
Mm.
put two and two together, if you will. So when I was out going door to door and knocking, with people, I realized at one point I was like, man, I'm going to all these different cities. I can't even pronounce half the names of these things. Why don't I just go back to my like OG copier or music days as a copier salesperson? And so I got creative. I had more fun. I wore hats. I took the suit off. I got rid of the sight seller, which is what they called the little doohickey that I carried around to hand
Yeah.
out brochures and white papers. And I just started being real and more creative, and I took off. And from there, I ended up in a place that I am today, which is that in 2019, I had the ability to be completely autonomous and my own boss and leave the organization that I was with, even though I also could have climbed the ladder there and had some opportunity, even like within the organization's network, to go and do other things. Um, and instead of, just going the traditional route, I went somewhere else and founded the Sales Rebellion, mostly because I believe that sales is broken. I believe that we've gotten away from people over products. I believe that we've gotten away from community over commission checks. I believe that we've gotten away from giving an experience over performing a pitch. And I believe that the big
Mm.
thing that we really need to get back to is this identity of basic human behavior, a normal function of life of just like providing for ourselves, our families, and doing it in a legendary way that protrudes excellence instead of what sales has become, which is this very negative place that people perceive it as, that's scummy, where people
Mm.
lie and they deceive and they manipulate. And the rebellion is all about building a massive community of sellers that see in personal development as just that like they want to be better at being themselves instead of being better at being a seller, because we believe that if we can make better people, that the rest of it just comes naturally, that sales is life
Love it.
and life is sales. And that's a little bit about me and the Sales Rebellion.
I love it. And in fact, that mentality, the end of the status quo and choosing legendary is what drew me to you initially. And as I've had more and more time to spend with you, you definitely walk it authentically, not to mention engaging with curiosity, or as one of your tenets, create wonder and serve others, right? And so through that lens of status quo sales, how do you get from status quo to legendary? How do you create wonder? How do you serve others and change the game? As a recovering salesperson, which of from the status quo to the new sales, right, in totality, that's part of the reason I jumped into enablement as a person who had walked in the sales shoes and been shown the status quo over and over again and chose to do things differently and got in trouble and got promoted into marketing and then ultimately into enablement. I'm curious, what are your thoughts? And let's start with, when did you first hear the words sales enablement and what did they mean to you?
I would say that when I really rack my brain and think about that, I go back to 2012 when I first really like heard the word enablement attached to sales. And at the time, I think people had it a little bit wrong, if you will, where it was there was a sales engineer or a sales application specialist even was still separate from enablement. They were like their own departments, where I felt like those were the people that were really doing the most enablement for salespeople in some instances. And enablement was attached to like an SDR and the power of like their tools to be able to do things like pull a list and make a phone call and set an appointment for me, the account executive. But I was a full cycle salesperson. So I started in those moments too, I started to think to myself, well, wait a second, like why would I want someone else to do this front end part of my job? That doesn't
Hmm.
feel like enablement for me necessarily. Like enablement for me would be like empowering me to have a system, a structure, a process, some life support in some instances, a knowledge base, a tools, like that's
Hmm.
how I kind of saw enablement. So I felt like we were maybe like kind of half-assing it, if you will. Excuse my French. And the thought was just,
All good.
well, how can we get back to, in that moment, like how can we get back to in this organization thinking not so much about like taking shortcuts with enablement, but like developing people with enablement. And I think I was heard pretty well in those instances, because I do remember being able to like coach and train the SDR style, but they called them appointment setters, right? Like that's what they called them in our industry in the copier space at that point in time, and canvassers. So people that would either be on the phone or they would be going and knocking on doors. And so it turned into like I turned into the enablement person. So I had these people that were doing like a cross function basically, or like a function of the sales process, if you will.
Mhm.
And then I was the one that was actually building the support behind that. I was putting together the process, giving them something repeatable, coaching them on things that were going wrong, helping them to understand the things that were going right, and everything changed.
So, if I may recap, enablement when you first encountered it was essentially technology. It wasn't a human being. In other words, the BDR SDR themselves weren't the enablement. They were being enabled to help you. You as a human being stepped back and went, wait a minute, we all need a skill set, not necessarily just a technology and a methodology in order to serve customers.
For sure, for without a doubt. And like we were a technology company, so it's not as if we didn't have like the cutting edge stuff when it came to emails and when it came to phones. And I mean, that's what we did. Like we were software people. We were, and sure, we sold hardware too, but
Right.
if like that stuff wasn't even in the equation, quite frankly, it was, which was kind of strange, I guess, at the time too. Like tools to us, like at that point, a tool to like to I should say to our upper management was an accountability partner, if you will. Like that's what a tool was. So even like, hey,
Hmm.
we got you guys this proposal building software to make it, like easier on you. What it really did, like we still had to do a lot of work, but like what it really did is it like crossed the T's and dotted the I's and said like, oh, hey, you missed these couple of things. Don't forget. And I think that that's what ultimately like for me, like that's where I started to understand enablement better. Is I was like, oh, well, that's like a really good support tool, and I need more of things like that. So like if I'm done with an account review and I got this 18 pages of notes, like what's actually important in here ultimately, and then the development side around like getting to know better what in those notes I needed to be consistent with moving forward, so that I didn't always take 18 pages of notes. Like something that taught me like, hey, you only needed 2 pages of these. And like in most cases, we had to learn that ourselves. We had to go experience it and learn it ourselves. We didn't have enablement like to help us to see like, oh, this could be done differently actually. And here are some things to consider. So, I
Yeah.
feel like enablement was us in my industry and like ultimately in my generation when I was selling.
And Dale, it's fun listening to you because I don't even know that you can see the forest for the trees, that you kind of are what good enablement looks like. I know you kind of get that, but as a person who's been through what's the definition of sales enablement and who are we? And are we just trainers? Are we just this? Like you intuitively, even in that story you shared from the beginning, really looked at the entire cross functional revenue engine and the tools and the systems and the methodology. And you kind of went, yeah, all that stuff's important, but let's back up and go, how are we serving? Right. And you helped align everyone in the company. Since you're a good, you broke down any silos that were there, right? And got everyone thinking differently, which was simply about the customer. So, hey, Dale, it's so awesome to have such a thought leader in enabling sales who not only has, it's almost like you've always walked in sales shoes, even and especially as a sales enablement professional, executive, owner of your very own company that's looking to literally change the world through the lens of serving others. Maybe we could start with I'd love to just go through a couple different categories of, like, for instance, outreach methodology. You do some unique things in this space, and they're super creative, and they're probably how a lot of the listeners either know you, or they're going to know you in a minute and go, oh, that's why someone threw a brick at me. Right.
Yeah, the outreach methodology, you got to go back to the origins. The origins are that, like, so if we look at the function of sales, we have to, no matter what, we have to always recognize that one of the most important jobs of a salesperson is to go and earn trust, build on credibility, and ultimately do what's right for somebody else in the process of
Mm.
leading them towards something that could potentially help their business. When I say that, I say that to point out that, like, sometimes we're not the right fit, and we shouldn't be pushing and fighting so hard for business. What we should be doing is, again, like, remembering that, like, we're talking to strange people that don't know us, and so we need to accommodate them through our interactions and the experience we give.
Mm-hmm.
We are then, like, spending time getting to know them and building credibility with them from the perspective of, like, our reputation and helping them to feel comfort. And then we're coming to this place and this conclusion of, nah, we're probably not the right fit, but thanks for your time and we'll stay in touch. And then there's a whole system, inside of the rebellion that comes after that, right? But again, like, going back to this identity of, like, that's what a seller does
Mm-hmm.
very basically. And, like, it's you can't get to that end result that we just talked about, win or lose, without the outreach. I think the idea of siloing salespeople into, like, you're just a closer, you're just an account management person, you're just an outreach person, you're just a presentation person. Uh, I I feel like that does a salesperson dirty to an extent. They don't get to actually fully develop themselves around, like, what basic sales functions are. And we also, like, man, we put a pedestal on something like the person who gets the lead and gets to work the lead, as opposed to the person doing the outreach. The person doing the outreach is the freaking hero, bro. Like, give me one AE that's been silver spoon fed into their position at this point in their career without being an outbound person in the first place, and give them to me, and let's have them do outbound for 90 days and see what happens, especially in this environment and what we're doing, right? So when I look at outbound and when I look at prospecting and when I look at this methodology that I'm about to just, like, zip through real quick here, I think it's really important to have that caveat and to understand my thought process around what outbound is. It is literally the holy grail of sales. Like, and the people that can do it right, that are choosing wisely every day, and that are leading with excellence every day, and that are understanding the basic function and ultimately the way that human behavior works and the way that psychology it is a constant inside of somebody's existence. And when we really look at the bigger picture, like, outbound is the single most important thing inside of sales, and we literally squander it. We say, oh, hey, kid out of college, go knock on every door, go call all these 10,000 people, and just use this script, and you'll get better over time and you'll do well. It's like, We have like people want to know why nobody's picking up the phone. It's because you've all destroyed the outbound process, and no one wants to talk to you anymore in the first place. No one wants to answer an email in the first place. And then a whole bunch of people out there are saying things like, "There's not enough people making cold calls. I call people all the time," and they say, "Man, you're the first person that's cold called me." Guess who says that, Eric? The people that say that are sales trainers calling VPs of sales. Well, of course, nobody's calling them. They don't have any decision making power other than to train their people. They're not buying logistics software. They're not buying, content management, record holders, digital holder or assets. They're not doing any of that stuff. Like, so what the heck? Of course, they say stupid things like that, and then we hear some guru posting about no one makes cold calls anymore. It's crazy, but going back to the outbound methodology, if you want to really be in sales, you also have to understand how unique an experience is. Let's look at it like this. 9 people are calling on the same account. One sells phones, one sells copy machines, one sells fiber, one sells some kind of bandage because it's a medical facility, one sells a laundry service, one sells some kind of software, records management software. 9 people, they all sell something different. Okay, they're all calling the same person. Hey, this is so and so with this company. I'm calling for X. Hey, this is so and so with that company. I'm calling for Y. Hey, this is so right. It's the consistent concept of like, it doesn't matter if you're different. It doesn't matter if you're a niche. It doesn't matter if you have something for these people that they need. You sound the same as the other 9 people that are calling. So let's take the 10th person. The 10th person comes in the room and they walk in the front door instead of calling on the phone because it's noisy. They walk in the front door instead of sending an email because it's noisy. And they walk up to the front desk and they hand somebody this giant box and they put it on the table and they go, "Could you get this to Suzanne?" And the person at the front desk is like, "Yeah, do I need to sign for it?" Like, "No, it's just a gift for her from me." Okay, who are you? It's okay. You don't need to tell her who I am other than I'm the copier warrior. When she opens this, I promise there's nothing crazy in here. Like, it's just paper, actually. You want me to open it real quick? No, that's okay. Yeah, if you just get it to her, that'd be great. All of a sudden, like, you've had this completely different interaction with somebody to the point that it almost feels a little crazy. But if you understand basic human emotion, the connection of people, the impact of words, the aura, the essence of another human, being in the same room, the reading the room effectively, being able to be empathetic, being able to apologize, be humble, be sincere, it works every time that the person you left that box for opens it. And then they open it and there's just like in this giant box, there's just this one little piece of paper and it's crumpled up and they uncrumple it and it says, "Hey, I know that 90% of the sales and marketing you get is trash anyway, so I pre-crumpled this letter to make it easier for you to throw away." And they've had this experience though where it ignites the senses. They've opened a box that smells like cardboard and lights them up in a different way than other things because they think like Christmas morning, right?
Funny.
They think bigger, right, than what you're really trying to get, than what they typically would, should say, experience during a cold call. They feel the texture of this piece of trash. And everything changes in the moment of that. And then they read these words that impact them. And, a good solid 7 out of 10 people, because of that, favor you in that moment. And even the 3 people that don't, they still will always remember who you are, no matter what. There's no stopping. I just kind of had a lot of fun and played around with these concepts, and really they all stem from this concept of these things: creating curiosity,
Mm.
giving a physical experience, providing emotional context, and ultimately being recognized, good or bad, never indifferent. Those were the principles.
This episode brought to you by
GTM AI Academy. Learn AI from a globally trusted resource. Coach K, Jonathan Carfort. Their bundle, Enablement AI Mastery, includes both the core Generative AI Foundations course and Enablement AI Mastery specifically. Each course has a value of $599 individually, but Coach K is offering them as a bundle with reduced pricing. And as a listener of the Inside Sales Enablement podcast, if you act now, you can use code ISE3 to get an additional 30% off of the entire thing.
You will also receive free access to the GTM AI Tools demo library. Coach K has done the demos, so you don't have to, and offers his straight shooting opinion, fact-based through an enablement lens. Go to www.gtmaiacademy.com and enter code ISE3 today and elevate your AI enablement game.
Love it. So that was an awesome deep dive into kind of the physical assets and the outreach. One of the things I came across on the website, and I've never asked you about this, part of what you offer in the training and coaching arena, which is right in the sweet spot of enablement, right? A lot of the folks, um, a rebel sales process with a twist. So can you tell us what that twist might be, and kind of what does a day in the life of a rebel look like?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Eric. So here's my thought that I think will help most people to understand is that rebels have at the forefront of everything that they do inside of the system that we put together, they have the understanding that sales is an art. Okay, so that's like the foundation of what we've created. So a lot of people hate when I say this because they go, no, it's a science. And I say to that, humbug. And really, I don't even say that. I just say, like, you can think that all you want. Like, but scientifically, even when you calculate everything right down to the T, there is still a fraction of a percentage or some type of
Yeah.
percentage that something could change. And because of that, and like, here's the thing is that, like, that's science, right? So, like, now let's think back to the beginning of what I just said, art. Okay, well, what is art? Art is emotion. Art is the story that's playing out. Art is the curiosity. Art is the context. Art is ultimately something that people become, like, they fall in love with and become familiar with, or they don't. And so when you look at the foundation of why I believe sales is an art, is that, like, you look, there is no two sales that are the same.
Mhm.
Anybody that wants to argue that with me, feel free, like, come at me, because I was in copier sales. I sold to people that built boats. I sold to people that were primary physicians for 100 patients. I sold to financial advisors that had 50 accounts in the local Orlando area. I sold to massive enterprise firms that worked directly with the government and made weapons. Like, and none of these people ever did anything the same. And even if you followed the steps and you found the pain and you did this and that, you still could lose the sale. And you wouldn't just lose it because, oh, they weren't a good fit or this or that. You lost it because you were so honed in on the science and keeping everybody in this, like, A to Z process, that you forgot to meet people where they are. There are these small principles like that that are very important inside of sales. So we start with this idea of art. We accompany that with risk and discomfort. So, like, let's talk about, like, in a sales system, let's talk about, like, a morning routine. People would say, like, get up and take an ice bath, meditate, eat some avocado seeds, just like the giant seed, just eat it raw, like, chew that thing. And look, I also take ice baths. I just want to say they're actually really fun. I actually just, like, use the cold creeks in my neighborhood, which is a mountain, to do ice baths, and they're fantastic. So I'm not saying that those things are wrong. I'm saying that, again, we try to build this science about things. And, like, so what we do is we say, okay, so, like, are you a morning person or are you more like 8 a.m. person? And no matter how somebody answers, we go, take a risk, right? Discomfort and risk. We said, let's risk something here. Let's do something a little different. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's find a risk and let's try it out. The other piece of the puzzle that's very important, so that coincides with that, is the pattern. So people talk a lot about, like, a pattern interrupt in sales. It's a buzzword at this point, but, like, what about your own typical patterns? Like, what's a typical day like? When do you give up and just say, like, oh, I'm tired. Yeah, it's Friday. I'm done. And, like, and at what point do those things ultimately be, like, hit a head as well too? Because let's just say, like, I'm 21, highly motivated, I'm being paid lots of money, I'm doing everything, I'm working late hours, I'm working on holidays like a sales bro, or all the people that think that that's cool. I'm wearing my suit and my tie, and I'm super successful for 4 straight years. Well, then year 5 comes around and the whole world just, like, collapses because there's no consistencies in life, guys. It's not a science like y'all lie to yourself daily about. Life is an abstract art. It is the most inconsistent thing that any of us will ever experience. You'll go to a restaurant for 15 years of your life, and on the 16th year, it's out of business. A place where you never thought they would go out of business. And then when you
Right.
look into the life of those people, you're like, damn, I didn't realize this was going on behind the scenes. Right. Because anything can happen to any of us at any time. And so we look at sales as life because of that. Right. So we start with this concept of risk and discomfort that leads to interrupting the typical patterns. And again, it's all based on this idea that sales is an art. And look, like, I do want to like clarify that, like, we do believe that like sales is like a play that's put on, but not the kind of that's manipulative or where we're some kind of character. It's an authentic play. It's the play of life. All right. It's the thought process. So let's apply that to like a discovery real quick. Because we talked a little bit about morning routines, but let's apply that to a discovery. So like my boy Keenan, shout out to Keenan, my guy Josh Braun, they'll give you some really great advice on discovery, like questions to ask, this, that, and the other. And I think, listen, I think those guys also would agree with me when I say this too, though, because I've got decent relationships with them both, and I've heard their thoughts on these things. Yeah, that like you can ask the same question every time if you want, but some people aren't gonna like it, and it ain't gonna work. So, like
Right.
for a discovery, as an example, like it's again about this principle of meeting people where they are, taking a risk, being just uncomfortable, finding the art in that communication in that moment with those people, what they need, and ultimately what you can give them without being disingenuous. So without playing a part, but ultimately being support for those people.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we have a framework for that as well too, right? Which would be the pseudoscience, if you will. So we have some ideas that we still give people that, you know, we root things in to provide guidance and clarity. But at the same time, we also encourage people to just take a risk. So right now, when somebody's like, well, this feels good, I think we want to move forward. Ask the person, well, how come? Like, why do you want to move forward? Instead of saying, great, I'll send over the paperwork, you know, or say something like, well, I would offer to send over the paperwork, but you probably won't sign it for several weeks. And I'll have to send you a bunch of empty donut boxes making jokes about how you won't get back to me. So I ate all these just in order to get you to finally respond to an email. And that's a risk. People see that as a risk. Like my boss, I remember one time I slid paperwork back across the table for a $280,000 sale. And he was like, don't ever do that again for the rest of your
Right,
life.
dude. That's my whole quota for the year. I'm one person. Right.
Yeah, you know, and I was like, nah, dude, I'll do that forever because it's gonna make me better. And ultimately
Yeah.
it's gonna take me to another level. It's gonna help me to connect with people. And I mean, people called me that Dale's my guy. That's what people said. Dale is my guy. You need something, you call Dale. Even if it's not a copier, Dale will help you. He'll help you to meet the right people, you know, and like I think that's what sales is. Ultimately, it's enabling those that are out in the workforce that are doing things that are not functional as sales, right? Even though I believe everybody's in sales, just to say it.
Hey,
But
hey.
if let's just say it's not functional sales, like if they can look at a salesperson and think like they got a great network, they know everybody, they're the guys that are like holding this whole thing together. Even if I'm not buying something from them, they can network me to the right people, or they can help my friends with things that they might need. You know, that's what we should be doing. That's what our sales system is, even.
Dale, you've got, let's just say you've got the entire enablement world out there. One of my favorite sayings from the original Inside Sales Enablement podcast, Scott Santucci and Brian Lambert, was everyone's trying to fix the salesperson, but we should be focusing on fixing the sales system, right? And there's a lot of that in what you're doing and in leading with humanity, both, by the way, meeting the customer where they are, but for sales enablement folks who are trying to help empower sales to be the best they can be. What are maybe a couple of things if you're speaking to that audience? And I'll cue it up by one of Brian's favorites, which is don't should on sales. So I'm sure that would be one of them, right? But in that vein, what are just a couple of things that you might give guidance to folks who are giving guidance to sales to be legendary?
Uh, we actually use a graph. We show mediocrity, warrior, and legend status.
Mm,
So it's just 3 stages, right? And we say we help people to see this. 99.9% of salespeople live in mediocrity. Even the really good ones, like that are hitting quota and going to President's Club, like they're just they're just achieving those things. They're not actually achieving excellence in most cases, or going like above and beyond what they could be doing. They're just like following the rules kind of thing and like doing what they do. And like that, the other side of that is like they're even in the consistency. Let's say like you as a seller makes like $250,000 a year for 5 years. If you're listening to this and you've been in sales long enough, you know just as well as I do that all that can go away in a heartbeat, or that you have to earn that in such an incredibly difficult way because of the way that your comp is structured and your quota goes up year over year. Like we all know that it's not easy being in sales, right? Is the bigger picture perspective. But the problem is because we chase the standard, we stay mediocre. We do the amount of calls we're supposed to do. We send the amount of emails we're supposed to send. We do it the way we're told. We never take the risk. We never become uncomfortable. We never look at it as an art. We never try something new. We never get creative. We never do anything beyond just like mediocrity. So we look at like to get out of me. So like mediocrity is what you live in as a salesperson. I'm sorry to say it,
That's
but
the
it
status quo you're talking about, right?
yeah, for sure. And I
Yeah.
believe that it's the majority of people, like beyond like 50% too. I'm talking like 80, 90%. That's what I believe it is. And that's so I think there's a group of people that choose a little bit something more or different. And those people that are the warriors. And that is the concept of the copier warrior. So they're the people that like this, they lean in on themselves, they develop a personal brand, they develop a voice, they develop a reputation, they understand that sales is reputation, that it goes beyond like your hard work. If you have 100 people in your network that also recognize your hard work, they love you, they want the best for you, and they want to see you win, that's incredible. And that's why sales is a team sport. Also, it's not two people selling, it's the network that you're building, right? Ultimately. And so the warrior just they do things outside the box. They send that LinkedIn message, but they don't do it with text. They send a video or a voice note. They don't just knock on the door and say, "Hi, this is a cold call." They hand you a sword to stab your copy machine with and say, "Call me if it doesn't work when you try to fix it with this, and I'm happy to come pick the
Uh,
sword back up, and chat
Something
maybe."
tells me you
Kind of
have a
thing.
sword or three available.
I do. I've got some
Yeah.
dope ones, but so that's the concept, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
warrior, and the warrior leads to the legend, and the legend is my father. Then, and really ultimately, like the model of my dad is one simple principle that's super important, which is servant leadership. And
Mm.
ultimately, we look at servant leadership from this lens of excellence. So we have this principle inside of the rebellion that I call choose legendary. I've been saying it for a long time, and I've always loved it. And I've been doing it since I was in sports, right? Choosing to be a legend. But the legend is this person that operates in excellence in all things, personal, professional, and private. That no matter what, like even if the door is closed and no one can see behind it, that you do things with excellence. You don't do them a little bit. You don't do them mediocre, in the state of mediocrity. You do them above and beyond with excellence in all things, no matter what. You don't need recognition. You don't need someone to tell you you're doing a good job. You don't need a pat on the back, because you understand that ultimately nobody cares as much as you. And
Mhm.
that if you can help other people to see just how much you care, you'll start to change that narrative in your circles. And people will start to become something much greater than what we've labeled them to be. So if I'm telling a sales leader, like, how to do it different, I'm first helping them to realize that, like, look, less than 10% of your bullpen will be willing to do this thing. And so, like, if there's 9 people, it's one person, maybe, and it might not even be one that's in there. It might be a new hire that you have to go find. And then ultimately, like, pushing those people to not their limits, but the expectations of excellence, and this identity of legacy building that
Mhm.
they desire to have for themselves, not your goals and your standards, theirs. And that's why I think alignment is important. That's why I think, just the general sense of understanding people that work for you, or they understanding you as a leader even, is just super important.
Got it. So what I take away from that is, because that was a lot of very personal, individual So through the lens of I'm an enablement leader trying to create an environment, and that would be my answer is, hey, Eric, what you need to do to get folks to legendary is to create an environment where the status quo isn't okay. It's not the way things are done, where this you're working with sales leadership and setting the bar differently. You're leaning towards creativity. What's the best way for an enablement person to make that pivot if in fact they're one of that, by the way, 10% that rise to the call, right? Is it call Dale? Like what's step one?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you could. We're always here to help. Like, that's our whole mission. But like, you just come, like, really ultimately, like, just come be a part of the community. Like, come and understand what we do from the bigger picture perspective, more so than just like the products we sell. And make sure we're the right fit from that standpoint too, because we'll
Mhm.
challenge you to think differently. We'll challenge you to look at your life through a lens you've never done, or through a lens that you're afraid to walk through in the first place. We'll take you to those heights. We'll take you to the top of those mountains. But come and know the community. We're not just
Yeah.
Dale. We're not like that's the thing. Is like we are the sales rebellion. We are a movement. We are unstoppable. We are a force. We are people. We're not just one individual, right? So I think ultimately it's, for people to start to like dig into this stuff and understand it better. Yeah, they can listen to my voice for sure, but like come ask other people in the community, like, well, what are
Mhm.
you doing? And how are you doing? And really see the power of the thing. Like
Love it.
we don't just preach it, we practice it. We've built it.
So what would you say? Maybe we're opening a door to some more community at this point. Is there, for instance, I know that you have a Slack. It's in fact, it's legendary. People know about the Sales Rebellion Slack. Is there, for instance, an enablement channel? Is that something you'd like to see? We've got an audience here. What would you tell them about how they can fully leverage the rebellion?
Yeah, I mean, the inside of the sales rebellion community, we have enablement people, we have marketers, we have HR people, we have sellers, we have VPs, managers, we have SDRs. It's a mixed bag of folks, like come be the voice that people are looking for in your own respective way, and then
Awesome.
find the voices that also, you can amplify and that can amplify your beliefs or your development even in the process. But like our free Slack channel is the place to go. You can
Love
find
it.
it on a link on our website, or if you can't get in, just figure out one of our emails and you might get a private invitation to come join us. So you never know.
Yeah, and in fact, listeners, we'll add a link so that you can engage with that. Be bold. Where are my 10% out there that choose legendary in the enablement community? So, Dale, maybe we land this whole thing. You got a couple milestones. One of them is, I think we just crossed it. Isn't this episode number 301 that you've either hosted or attended somewhere around
Yeah,
there, Mr.
it might
Podcast
be it
Hero?
might be closer to 351, but it's
Wow.
definitely like it's over a hump for sure to some
Okay.
capacity. So
Well, thanks for hopping over that hump with us right here on the Orchestrate Sales Property. Let's shift to the other really, really, really big milestone, your first ever global event.
so we got a great cast of speakers. We've got 5 individual folks running workshops. I'll name a couple names: Leslie Bennett, Stu Heineck, Kevin Dorsey, Mr. Katie himself, Dewan Brown, Rika Greathouse. They're fantastic people. We've also got a soapbox with some like great influencers in the space of LinkedIn that are coming to spend about 5 minutes on a soapbox to speak to you about something they're very passionate about that can help you in your sales walk and enable you in your sales walk. We've also got a great, just like general community of people that are coming. We're just about at 100 people at this point. And those folks are all like walking their own path inside of the rebellion. And ultimately, because of that, you can network with them. You can learn from them. You can encourage them. You can be a part of their support system as well, too. And besides that, we also have some incredible founding partners from Scribeless to Copy.ai to Pitchfire, SalesReach.io, and then Luster. Y'all need to check out Luster, by the way. Like that's the stuff right there. Matter of
But I
fact,
want to
Luster's
practice on my
bringing.
customers, Dale.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later,
Right.
Eric. So the rumor is that Luster actually has some dust that they're sprinkling in the drinks on Thursday night too.
Oh boy.
Which by the way will be non-alcoholic, all of them. This will be a alcohol-free event. So if
Clarity.
you have yes, if you have been thinking, yeah, I'd love to go to a conference, but you're just not into all the nighttime stuff that happens, we're bringing sobriety back to having fun, and that'll
Love
be
it.
great. And the sponsors, you'll get to meet the sponsors. They're foundational sponsors, right? So they're people that'll be involved in the event no matter what, for the lifetime of the event, whether they, have a presence or not. They're going to be brick layers, if you will. So, and these are people that we believe are some of the greatest from the enablement side when it comes to like what they specifically support, from contact marketing to practice, all the way to automation for content purposes, research purposes. There's lots of great sponsors that are coming that again will help the rebels. They'll help the rebels, right? We do have Grove Cookies as a sponsor too. They are in a phenomenal small business. Their sponsorship level is that, spoiler alert, they're donating cookies to all the attendees, and the cookies are freaking delicious. So you definitely want to come and get a package of Grove cookies. And if you're a seller, after you come and taste them, you'll know that, man, my clients will love this, and you'll become one of their biggest fans because of that. They ship, it's super fresh, it's incredible what service they provide. So these are the homies. Come meet the homies, come hang out at Totality, come run workshops with people instead of listening and the folks bark at you. And then if you stick around after Friday for Saturday morning as well too, you'll hear a keynote by your boy Dale Dupree, and you'll actually participate in a panel of 4 people: a procurement officer, a financial expert, a marketing developer, and that marketing person is also in higher education, and a sales expert. Those people will all 4 be on stage having a discussion about the end of sales and what's next. It'll
Love it.
be a riveting conversation that is highly packed with value. And like I said, the audience will participate in that panel as well too. So that's a little bit of the deets of the event. And to give you a brief reason why, because sales conferences suck. We go and like we're pitched the whole time, and sure, there's some cool stuff that we learn, or some great people that we get to listen to talk about themselves for an hour. But like, why not make it about the sellers again? Why not make it about the buyers again? Why not make it about the community that we're trying to build? Why not have some fun? Why not be radical? Why not think outside the box? Why not rebel against mediocrity and the status quo? And instead of talking about that, we're doing it, ladies and gentlemen. So join us in
Love it.
Knoxville, September 26th, 7th, and 8th. We hope to see you there. There's only a dozen tickets left.
Crazy, man. And it sounds like it's going to be super immersive and intimate. I mean, 100 for a sales conference with that lineup of speakers is insane. Come for the cookies and stay for the rebellion, right?
Let's go.
Awesome. Any parting shots to the enablement community specifically, Mr. Legendary?
I just want to say I love the enablement community, and I'm grateful for Erich and all that he does for the enablement community. This podcast, voices like Erich's, and ultimately all of you that are listening, you guys make sales better. I love you all, and I'm thankful to be on this show.
Amen. We love you, Dale. Grateful for all that you do to help us all choose the right path and be the best we can be and meet our fellow men and women where they are. Excited to see you in Totality in just a few weeks. Hopefully, listening audience, with a few of you too. Come join me and Dupree.